Hey, folks. Jamie here for the VRNation Station podcast. One thing I'd love to do is first just ask, please, if you guys could do me a favor, if you can hit the like button, if you can follow, it really makes a difference, especially when we live in these algorithm driven times. It definitely would be good because this podcast is a very interesting podcast. I was happy to shoot it with Sasha Lawler from Rome. She's the CEO of Rome. And I think, when I think through what the conversation is, Sasha brings more than 15 years of experience in the hospitality and vacation rental technology. She built Rome around a pretty simple, but powerful idea that if property managers could offer guests the flexibility they want without putting their hard earned booking revenue at risk, that is something to go after. And now she's protected more than 100 million bookings across more than 14 booking channels. This is key, you guys. Have a good look, take it, do what you want with it. But ultimately, what Rome offers is something that definitely is going to help your business. I hope it's a good podcast for you. If you have questions, please fire them off. Either way, whatever platform you're looking at, we answer. And again, if you want to be on the podcast, just let me know. All right, folks, welcome back to the VRNation Station podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Hansen from the Great White North here in Wisconsin, which is now covered with smoke from the Greater White North, Canada. Thank you, guys. Please put your campfires out and all that fun stuff because I can't breathe. It sucks. Today, I have got a special guest, Sasha Lawler. She is the founder and CEO of Rome. And if you don't know, Rome is a company focused on helping vacation rental property managers offer more flexible cancellation policies without taking on the financial risk of guest cancellations. But instead of me telling you about Rome, Sasha, please introduce yourself to the group and just tell us a little bit about Rome.
I would love to, and thank you so much, Jamie, for having me on the show. This is very exciting. I have been fortunate enough to be in the industry for quite some time now. Before this, I spent about a decade leading go-to-market teams for some software in the space, some property management, insurance, payments. So I had a great, really like front row seat to all of the changes that have happened in the industry in the last 10 years, and so much has evolved. And I think one thing that always stood out to me after talking with hundreds of vacation rental managers was that this business is very different. Property managers are caught between two very different stakeholders, and there's a lot of tension that comes along with that. And really kind of compounding that was there was a shift in what travelers wanted, especially post COVID. And that was the need for flexibility. And we saw hotels adapt, we saw flight and airlines adapt, and vacation rentals were the last holdout. And honestly, in a lot of ways, it makes sense because that other stakeholder doesn't love when they get a 5 or 10 grand reservation 10 days prior to arrival that canceled. So
Right.
every cancellation policy was a trade-off, and that's really what we built Rome to solve.
Well, that's excellent. And it's a great the timing is very interesting, right? So the industry, and I kind of want to jump into this topic because cancellation it's such a finicky double-edged sword, right? You look at as a guest, as somebody who uses short-term rentals, and I'm like, I really do appreciate the ability to have cancellation because my plans shift, right? Like there's all sorts of stuff. I've got kiddos running every which way but loose, and who knows if a vacation is going to get held up or not, or what the case might be. But as a property manager, as working with a property manager, it was really it was tough. You took it on the chin, especially with companies like Airbnb, where they would just pull the funds. Like there's no negotiation on it. And now the rules have changed. So maybe jump in a little bit and just tell me like what's fundamentally changing now this year more so than any year previously here.
Yep. You're right. It is a very interesting time. I think this momentum has just been building and building for years. And Airbnb is really, in a lot of ways, kind of leading this charge, world's largest travel marketplace. And really, the two kind of biggest, most recent changes that we've seen Airbnb come out with is first, a lot of property managers have already got the notice They're retiring their strict policies come September, and moving those listings to a firm policy, which I think I think a lot of managers wouldn't really call that firm. And then the second is they've actually launched what they're calling an extended cancellation policy, which is actually giving travelers the ability to opt in for a more flexible cancellation policy for a non-refundable fee at the time of booking. So I think both of these changes really signal something much bigger, right? It's validating something that we've known for a while, right? That not only do travelers want flexibility, I think the bigger thing is that they're validating that they're willing to pay for it, right?
Right. Right. And that's, again, I it's a double-edged sword, right? Because you look at it and you're going, man, it actually, clearly it's a benefit, right? It's a product that guests are purchasing and they're paying for it. Um, and it's, I almost see it like almost as much of a disruption. A lot of people see it as a bad thing, but yeah, a lot of times bad things can have positive outcomes, right? Like I look at Rome and the position that it's kind of put you guys in now is, well, you know what? It's great to have an alternative to that OTA doing that, right? Like when now that the buyers are getting trained, emotionally, mentally, that this is something that they should expect, which is the downside of an Airbnb and the size that they are. Having Rome there to actually be able to create something that help cover them with a cancellation policy, I think it's really really important. I think it's kind of a good idea. So it's funny though when we talk about the financial performance, like that double edged sword. Let's talk a little bit about the owners, right? Like what's the impact to the owners in your mind? Like how do you feel like that's really, I'm just gonna say sucking for them, if that's not the right term. How about it's not working out maybe in their favor as much as they hoped?
Going down to the more flexible policies.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally it's a difficult position for a property manager, traveler, and owner. Like you put it very well. It's like I've got a 6-year-old. I don't know if he's going to get into the soccer tournament in fall. I don't know if my husband's going to lose my job. Those are my concerns, right? And then as a property manager, I think from the owner's perspective, like they've got mortgages to pay, right? Like they built the American dream in a lot of ways. They worked hard. They bought that second home. They bought that asset, and they bought that asset in many ways to deliver. So I think that expectation of having guaranteed income isn't an outlandish expectation, right? Like it makes
Right.
sense. I think in a lot of ways, like before Rome, I think managers were making the right decision, right? Like they were doing their job, they were protecting the asset, they were doing right by the owner, which at the end of the day, if you don't have an owner, you're not going to have a listing on any
Right.
cancellation policy, right? And that's what this business is built on. So I think it is kind of a difficult position for all the stakeholders really involved, and like that's we wanted to remove that tension. And honestly, I think in a lot of ways, I don't see Rome as competing with like these Airbnb policies. I do feel, and like in a lot of ways, we built Rome for managers to be able to meet this moment, right? To democratize what the largest marketplace just validated, because they're not booking just on Airbnb. It's Verbo. It's their own direct booking websites. It's the brands that they've built, and for professional managers to be able to leverage not only flexibility but guaranteed income as part of their value proposition, as part of their business strategy, for them to be able to monetize it, uh, I think is for our partners the bigger opportunity.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And when I think about like the trade-off, right? As a property manager, I still it's almost like you still had to choose, right? You had to choose between, protecting the owner's revenue, right? The asset, you're going for the asset, or increasing bookings. And the thing that always bothered me, I'm going to be less colorful with my language, even though it's Friday. I'm going to be, and my listeners are like, "What, Jamie Turner, really?" But the reality is, when I think about it, and what really bothered me quite a bit about, when I was working back with my OTAs, not just Airbnb, VRBO as well, there's that balance between protecting the revenue for the owner and then, of course, increasing bookings. And it was always like, oh, price dive, price dive, price dive, add more amenities, add more amenities. And then it's like, you got to remove all your cancellation policies. It's got to be the most flexible policy possible if you ever want to get your bookings. And it was literally driving us down that path. And, I was just interested what your thoughts are on that, because it's like, there is a line between the owner revenue and increased bookings. And when I see what Airbnb is doing, um, I see them increasing their revenue for sure. But maybe talk a little bit about how Rome can work with property managers on doing something more for them, right? Because
Yeah.
option A and option B, they got to choose one, and it's like you can only do so much.
Yeah. Well, I'll challenge your sentiment a little bit, Jamie. I
Oh,
think from from my perspective, a couple of things. First, uh, I think your sentiment is shared with a lot of property managers, right? And it's hard, right? Like you guys are in the weeds, in the fields, doing the work, managing the business, and to play by someone else's rules. I don't like to do that. No one likes to do that, right? But I think at the end of the day, a lot of times we're making this assumption that Airbnb is making changes based on a ideology or a philosophy. But at the end of the day, flexibility isn't a belief that they have. They're a large company, and as big companies do, they're making data-driven decisions and responding to a change in consumer behavior, right? So I
I,
think in a lot of ways, there's more alignment between the OTAs and managers and all of us than we feel on the surface, because certainly the tension is real, right? Um, so I think the bigger opportunity that we see, and honestly, the most surprising thing to me after launching Rome was, yes, flexibility is important. The traveler is important. We've been so fortunate that we've got lots of customers and partners that are just brilliant, right? And it's been astounding to me how they've leveraged this income protection to build stronger businesses. And they've done that in a couple of different ways. They recognize flexibility is important. Travelers are willing to pay for it. They're relaxing their cancellation policies. We're sitting behind the scenes and protecting them, and they're monetizing it, right? They're pricing for flexibility, increasing their rates anywhere from 10 to 15%. They're seeing across the board, on average, our customers this year have seen about a 43% increase in bookings. They're capturing demand more effectively, and they're creating a revenue stream net of Rome's cost. So that's really important too, because that's been a massive shift. Like the squeeze on managers has gotten harder and harder over the years. And then on the other side of the coin, on the other side of the marketplace, our managers have been using this to monetize the owner. We have partners who are using income protection as a value proposition of their management company, and taking their 20% commission to a 25 or 30% commission rate. Uh, and they've been very successful at doing that. And those in more competitive markets, they've been, using it for owner acquisition, which is great. And it's amazing the results that they're seeing, right? I think about especially our partners in ski markets who went through what could have been a very devastating season. And it wasn't. They have the happiest owners in their markets because they got checks when their homes were sitting empty. And now they've got an acquisition message that's pretty strong because those owners are in pain. So to see our managers leverage this as a marketing tool, as an acquisition tool, um, this it's incredibly exciting for us to see that, right? And that's why we
right.
started not to sell insurance. We wanted to make an impact.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense. So let's maybe get a little bit I wanna back up a little bit and just maybe break this down a little bit more for people that are listening. So when we start thinking about Rome, tell me more about, like, booking income protection. Like, how does it work? Like, what's the physical machine look like?
Yeah. That's a great question. So under the hood, we're protecting a manager's P&L against guest cancellations. So there's commercial insurance, there's automation, there's technology. We integrate with a manager's core property management software, so we're able to automate this protection behind the scenes. After working in the industry for so long, we recognize that like no new software, reduce operational, complexity. So our customers are managing everything in their property management software, managing their cancellation policies the same way they do pre-realm, pushing out to the channels just as they do. And we're sitting behind the scenes and we're monitoring those reservations and we see what gets booked, we see what gets canceled, and we're coming in and protecting them if, when they get a cancellation and they can't rebook or naturally they're rebooking at a lower rate.
Got it. Got it. Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Now when we had talked previously, you had shared an almost like an info slide. It had four basic areas, but instead of like breaking those apart, let's maybe talk about each one in particular. So you talk about the win more guests. Maybe tell me a little bit more about win more guests because I think it's one of those where uh, like I said, I've had other guests, other companies on where they talk about how they're pulling in bookings. And I'm going, okay, that makes sense to me. But when we talked about the win more guests from your perspective, it actually includes even with the OTA rankings, which I also think was kind of interesting. So maybe talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Um, you're right. It is a kind of a multifaceted strategy on the OTAs, Airbnb, and all of the other OTAs. You're playing the algorithm game, right? They know what travelers want. They're optimizing for it, and that cancellation policy that you select has a direct impact to whether you land on page 2 or if you land on page 17, right?
Right.
Um, so that is an immediate opportunity to play the game without holding the bag, right? To get in front of more travelers, to make sure that, we're exposing these homes to the demand that's out there, right? To be as competitive as possible. On direct booking websites, what I love is that it really just becomes part of your brand promise, right? I think you see today and you go through a lot of these checkout screens and cancellation policies are kind of like buried in the terms and conditions. We're kind of like
Right.
crossing our fingers, hoping no one sees it. But every single traveler, we're getting to that checkout screen. And we're like, what are we committing to,
Right.
right? So
Security, trust.
it's friction in the buying process. We're
Right.
burying it. It's and we want to flip that equation, right? Like we're saying, no, no, don't bury it. Market it, right? Put it on your homepage. That's a reason that travelers land on your homepage and say, "Oh, it's July and there's no snow on the ground, but man, remember when the kids had so much fun in Vail? Like, why not? Free cancellation." It's like that is the building trust with the guest, um, getting them to book earlier. And it really is, it's yes, about higher conversions. But a lot of it is getting them to book earlier, organically growing your ADR, fighting back against this increased, length of stay, and just doing what all managers set out to do, build a great hospitality company, right? Be able for your res agents to say, I get that the school schedule came out and you can't come anymore. Let me know when you got new dates,
Right.
just doing the right thing and building a brand around that. I think on the guest side is pretty important. Um, yeah, I think insurance as a marketing tool, who would have thought?
Yeah, right. Exactly, exactly. Well, so the other thing, and so the next slide that I just kind of picked out was win more owners, right? And I know how I've always spun the value prop for guests and basically re-audience that message for owners. But how are you doing that from an ownership perspective? Like, how do you what are you packaging it? Are you helping those property managers with some level of marketing to help them bring in
Yeah,
owners?
we are. And you know, it's like this is kind of the second compounding shift that doesn't get as much flashy attention as a flexible cancellation policy. But the same shift can be said for what's been happening on the owner side, right? 10 years ago, the moat for most managers was distribution. I can get you on all the channels. I've got a website. We've got the ops team behind you. Fast forward 10, 15 years later, owners have access to technology, the tools, the pricing, competition, especially post COVID. There's so many more professional managers. There's so many more options than there ever has been before. So for our managers, Rome has been the answer for how do we not have to compete on commission? How do we not have to match that 20K signing bonus? And really, that is the promise of I'm not just going to get your properties on these channels, I'm going to make sure your income sticks, right? Bad snow season, traveler volatility, that income protection is very, very valuable to owners. And I think a lot of our
Right.
partners have shown that their guests are willing to pay for flexibility. It turns out owners are willing to pay for income protection as well. So I think both sides of the equation, the owner value prop might be even stronger, right?
Right.
Guaranteed and giving managers a lever to like really go to market with a strong value proposition that is competitive, that meets exactly what owners are looking for, I think is very, very powerful. And yes, we love to get in the weeds with our partners on understanding their businesses, understanding their owners, helping them, with messaging, with acquisition campaigns. We want to be as hands on as folks will let us be. My co founder, Austin, and I, we're not insurance bros. We actually started our careers in the industry working in marketing at a company called Blue Tent. So
Yep.
that's really our background. Our background comes from marketing to travelers, marketing to owners. So that we get excited about that.
Well, that's good. That's good. And it's funny you said that about working with them because the next slide was talking about building a better business, right? So, and I think it speaks towards because I start to go, all right, yeah. I mean, from the marketing perspective, that helps. I mean, I was working with a different insurance company in the industry, not for cancellation policy stuff, but more for damage, right? So like we were working back and when I think about what we were doing with them and how we were using their marketing to upsell, I should say, especially to owners, what do you I guess, what do you focus on when you're talking with a property manager? Like if you were trying to sell me right now and I said, "So what is this gonna do for my business?" Like what would you hit me with?
I'd, I'd probably want to ask you a bunch of questions first. I'd probably want to know what your goals are, right? Like, I think every property manager has different goals in mind, right? Like, we have partners who just doubled inventory overnight due to an acquisition, and their biggest focus is, I just bought this book of business. How do I keep it?
Right.
And if we know that, it's immediate messaging. It's like, guess what? There's a new, better sheriff in town. Um, before you were under our stewardship, this is how much you lost. That's not happening anymore, right? If it's bookings, we'll focus on bookings. And then for a lot of managers, they're starting to think long term, right? What is the longer term play, the exit strategy? Um, I think the best moment that I've had as a founder in this journey is, sitting across from uh, one of our large customers who has been with us for over a year, and hearing their working with them and celebrating their acquisition success. And the role that we played in it, right? Hearing that they'd been in the business 30 years, they were telling us about their college kids back then. They were screaming and running around when they were picking up phone calls. Um, and they built that business 30 years. And it just so happened they were going through due diligence in the worst snow season possible. And had they not had Rome, um, that deal wouldn't have crossed the finish line as the feedback
Right.
that their brokers gave us. Um, as we know, I mean, revenue quality is what investors are looking for, right? And having that predictability, it's not just about what your forecast is. There's risks. And when there is an acquisition at play or an investment to be made, those investors are assessing your revenue quality based on what that risk is, right?
Right.
Uh, so that was a great moment. Again, one of those moments where we were like, we didn't anticipate our insurance product would have this much of an impact, but
Is that the Summit? Is that Summit Cove? Is that what you're referring to?
yep.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Awesome. So I'm I'm an old insurance guy, believe it or not. I was a product manager in the insurance industry for
I'm an
a
old
long time.
soul.
I was in, property casualty for a bit, and then I was in, credit disability, credit life, and then, so I know quite a bit about how insurance works, but what I'm still trying to wrap my head around is, um, what's the nuts and bolts? Like, how physically are the steps working? So when we think about step 1, a property manager offers this flexible cancellation, and then the guest books, and it's just cancel, and then the manager would then refund. Like, how do you get that information back? Like, what do you need for proof? Because I understand, along those lines. And then how do you collect premium?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the beautiful thing about it is like we are very removed from the like the cancellation, the messaging, the marketing, the communication with the guest. The guest never knows anything about Rome. All they know is that I book at Hanson Vacation. I can cancel up to 7 days prior to arrival. Property managers are simply updating their cancellation policy in their PMS, updating their rate strategy. They've got a new, lever for marketing. Where we come in as, we really built our company as a technology platform, right? We are that infrastructure for commercial protection. We have a unified API. We integrate with, all of the, leading property management softwares. So when a partner signs up, we're connecting to their software and we can see cancellations. We can see reservations in real time. We can see what channels don't need to be covered. We're not charging premium on an owner stay. And then all of the coverage in terms of the policy is validated with our technology, right? Like we've got a complicated rules engine that was built around, managing and automating all of those triggers, leveraging that, a manager's data from their property management software. So we see these dates got canceled. Here's what got rebooked. Here's what got rebooked at a lower rate. So it's like no new spreadsheets, no math, none of that. The claims process is, completely hands off, automated. Our managers are simply getting an email that says, "Here's what we owe you. Click here." It's not another, tedious. I think managers have enough going on.
Right. Right. So is that technically connected via like API to a property management system, or how
It is.
does
Yeah,
okay. Okay. So that's you get a notification of a cancellation through the API feed then.
we do. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And that's why it's hands free. So, for the folks that aren't as technical as what I'm talking about, what Sasha's really saying is it will just magically happen behind the scenes for you. And you just get the money back, and then you pay your owners, and then you'd be happy just like they will. So that's good. We got to keep it simple for some of us. Other folks, not so much, but yeah. But that's cool. So you guys monitor, and then you monitor the rebooking. So you're basically seeing, all right, well, If, somebody cancels and it gets rebooked, then you don't have to pay out, and it's still all handled on the back end. So property A gets canceled, and all of a sudden it gets picked back up. If there's a gap, do you guys cover the gap for the got it.
We do. Yeah, we cover the gap because naturally, right? It's like you've got a house that booked 100 days prior to arrival. You get a cancellation 20 days prior. It's not going to book at the same rate. So we're covering the delta on that rebooking, which in some ways like helps put property managers in the driver's seat on like what's that rebooking strategy, right?
Right.
Uh, it is, and I'm sure a lot of it is just driven by like what that owner really wants, right? I could be more aggressive with rate, or how do I know that I'm protected. How can I go to market and get that rebooking?
And that makes sense. So ultimately, whatever they would get would still be good because it's reducing the risk that you guys have taken out on, or the policyholder taken out on cancellation. So essentially, if somebody rebooks at half price, they're only going to end up paying for half. So it's still a win-win. That's interesting. Boy, that makes it life so much easier. Um, so I'm just like looking through my next questions that I have here, and I think you've answered a lot of them. So it's like ultimately, so the guest isn't really the one. This is where I get a little tangled up with insurances. So the guest is funding the policy, but really the policy is based on the property manager. So it's essentially the funding mechanism comes in through the guest. They're paying for this cancellation insurance, but it's not really in their name, it's in the property manager name. And then when that gets executed with a cancellation, it's all behind the scenes on the PMS side. The guest doesn't even know about it.
Yeah. So the guest is not buying insurance. They don't know anything about insurance. It's not insurance that they're buying. They're they're booking a property that has flexibility. Managers are pricing for that flexibility, which often covers the cost of the program and then some, which is where that margin comes in. So it's simplicity, right? It is like a seamless experience for the traveler. It's the ability for the property manager to update their cancellation policy and compete on those algorithms we talked about. And then the commercial insurance is sitting behind the scenes and protecting the manager as the name
Got
of
it.
insurance on the policy.
What is the cost of having the policy? Is it like a percentage of the transaction, or is like how does that work?
It is. It's a percentage of the transaction, and really kind of based on a couple of different factors, going through underwriting, what types of coverage do managers want. And I think again, being in this industry for a while, we recognize it's like we've got thousands and thousands of properties that we cover, anywhere from $100 condo in Destin to uh, $40,000 weekly rental in Vale. So those have very different booking windows, right? They have very different protection needs. So I think that's definitely a core belief of ours is like in a lot of ways there isn't always a one size fits all solution. So
No,
we have
that
some
makes sense.
flexibility and coverage.
That makes sense. And as far as like the options for cancellation policy, I mean, Airbnb is kind of forcing it is that it's free cancellation. So it's like 100% at any time. How does that work? I mean, as far as if you are a property manager that maybe never offered cancellation policies, right? Like she's like there was no cancellation. Like how do you tier them into what Airbnb is going to force them into versus what you can offer them from a direct booking perspective?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think the free cancellation, um, what is free cancellation is like very much conflated, right? And I think the easiest way for me to think about it at least is, I'm on a website, or let's say I'm on, Verbo or Airbnb or any online travel marketplace. And I'm looking for a vacation and my arrival date is 45 days out, right? I finally got the school calendar. I'm ready to rock. Let's go. And I hit that. number one search filter on a lot of these platforms, free cancellation. Um, if you're no refund within 60 days, that property is not showing up, right? So that free cancellation is highly dependent on when the traveler is searching. And the reason I say that is uh, going back to the there's no one fit size all solution, as there are some managers that we recommend going to the most relaxed cancellation policy. And there's others where, I think, especially out of the gate, to see the gains that, a lot of our managers are seeing, um, you don't have to go all the way down to a 24-hour cancellation policy. And honestly, sometimes that doesn't work for all property managers from not just from an operational standpoint, right? So I think it really is highly dependent on market, on property type. We leverage a lot of third-party data to help our managers make some informed decisions about that. What does the comp set look like? What is the saturation by cancellation policy in a given market? That gives us a pretty good indication of at least where a property manager should start, and also an indication of what kind of pricing power they'll have, right? Are you playing catch up to a market? Are you first to lead a market? And then on the direct booking website, I think some of the fundamental questions are, I think that managers struggle with is, do I want to give a more lenient cancellation policy on an OTA than I do my own direct booking website? Um, and I think for most managers, the answer is no. Um, but I still want my direct booking website to be the most competitive. So we do have the ability to support a manager who is offering the more hotel-like flexible, no non-refundable or flexible rate, and protect that flexible rate on their direct booking website. So they're getting the best of both, right? I've got
Right,
the
right.
most aggressive cancellation policy on my website, but I've also got the lowest rate for those travelers that wanna feel like they're getting a discount when they hit non-refundable. So I think it is important to think about, yeah, what is my strategy as these changes are being rolled out, as our hands are being forced in some ways? How do I make sure that my brand is still the best?
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, okay. Well, fair enough. Your brand's best. Why? Tell me, give me some stats, give me some numbers. Tell the people why. What is the proof in the pudding that Rome is actually doing what you're saying it's doing? I mean, I saw the stats you laid down. I thought they looked pretty good. So I'll let you tell the folks.
Well, I think I think our customers, again, we're very grateful for this, have been our biggest advocates. They've been our biggest megaphones. They've been very supportive. So if you're curious about Realm, I would definitely encourage you to talk to one of our existing partners and hear the stories for yourself. Because I can send you a slide deck that has all the stats, and they're great, right? Like our managers are seeing 53% more bookings on Airbnb year over year. We're growing lead time 67%. But there's also the stories where, owners are churning less because they got bookings on the calendar for December that they never had before, right?
Right.
And I think having those conversations and thinking about how income protection, how flexibility would play into your business, um, is probably what I would do if I was in your shoes, right? I think all of us got to have some showboaty stats on a website, but the proof is in the pudding. It's working, and we couldn't be more excited about it, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and I don't need to put you on the spot because you're going to riff off these stats, but I have them in front of me, and I think they're pretty cool, right? So I think of 30% more booking revenue. Like that's king, right? When I think about that, that's a third more booking revenue, right? 42% longer booking windows. That gives you more time, folks, to do things that you need to do. Like I I'm not gonna lie. Like it's not like Sasha's not paying me. I'm just telling you right now, for anybody listening, like this is just relieving such a huge pain and pain point in the industry because it's like more Airbnb bookings, which I'm a little bit. I'm gonna reserve my statements on Airbnb. In my opinion, is my opinion, but 53% more bookings, regardless, is impressive. And then 63% more on the shoulder season. That's king, especially when you're in a ski area or when you're anywhere seasonal. I think that's really important. So I just throw those stats out because they really piqued my interest when I was looking at them. And I think that's important. I think it's important for folks to know. So I told you I wasn't going to keep you too long, Sasha. So what I'm going to do is I want to wrap up, and I'm kind of like, trying to find my niche as far as like how I wrap up my podcast. So I'm starting this new trend where I sit there and I say, I'll ask you more of a philosophical question. Okay. And the question is, you know, if we have this conversation again 3 years from now, right? What will the best operators be doing that everyone else wishes they'd started today?
I think the best operators will have earlier than others started treating their management agreements with their owners like asset management agreements and delivering income protection and delivering value that the majority of the market hadn't yet adopted. Securing that relationship with those homeowners, building that brand, building that durable business, that revenue predictability, as well as, growing bookings and giving travelers what they want. I think in a lot of the ways it's to have your cake and eat it too. And I do believe that the early adopters are going to win, right? Especially on the owner acquisition and retention front. Um, we've got managers who are renewing contracts right now, and their owners are saying, yes, I'll sign. As long as you stay with Rome, I will sign. So I think seeing that owner retention, that owner acquisition, building that those long-term relationships is, I think, what's going to separate managers in the future.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is that makes a ton of sense to me, Sasha. And again, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast today. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And I think this is such a great product. I mean, it really is. It's something that I wish that I had had. It would have saved a lot of lost owners and relationships. I think if we had had this in place. So, thank you very much for joining me again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome y'all to the VRNation station. We're diving deep into vacation rental sensations. From management tips to the latest creation, join us each week for some sparkle and conversation. VRNation station, tune in and feel the thrill.